Okay. So this is a kind of introductory video to the Super Metroid Zelda Link to the Past, or SMZ3 Randomizer, an item randomizer created by initially by Total, a speedrunner of a Super Metroid and Super Metroid hack expert. Mostly does a lot of ROM hacks of the original Super Metroid game. Unfortunately, I didn't record the sound with this, so it's going to be just me talking. I have been off and on with my desktop audio, but we'll just go with what we've got here. So I'm doing a brand new playthrough with a game I haven't played in a couple weeks, so I don't remember exactly what was going on, which is good, because it gave me a relatively new experience to it. As usual, video's a little bit choppy and rough, but it actually gets better from what I was seeing before. Oh, already it's better. Good. So you start the game, and now it's getting choppy again, whatever. So you start the game in, if you've seen any other randomizers out there, you take a ROM of the game and you put it in, and they will randomly make a brand new ROM for you that takes a bunch of options in the game and changes them. And this one actually combines both Zelda Link to the Past and Super Metroid together. And it starts you off in Super Metroid so that you can change your settings, like what your controls are, and turn on Moonwalk, as I just used earlier there. And there are 4 doors in the game that let you swap to Super Metroid, between Super Metroid and Link to the Past. They use a couple of reload stations or map rooms that nobody running the game really needs to use, and a couple of empty caves or houses in Zelda that don't have anything important in them, like shops or chests. And it's an item randomizer. There are various randomizers of both games that are like entrance randomizers and enemizers that randomly distribute enemies around and change door locations. But this is just an item randomizer. So all the items in both games are spread about 300 or so in about 200 or so in Zelda and 100 in Super Metroid. So normally when you play the game, you go immediately through the door to the Link to the Past. One of the things I showed off here was just the 2 locations you can actually check in Super Metroid without it. Now, this is kind of a guide to show what it's about and kind of show some of the early strategies and such, and this is generally what I consider a weak play, and a lot of other runners do as well. Everything you do in a randomizer like this is a risk, basically. A risk-reward kind of situation. So you can do the first Morph Ball pedestal, and then those missiles in the sky you can reach by doing a damage boost, which I did successfully there that normally I can't even pull off. But your basic runners are able to do that pretty reliably. So when I was watching the 2 versus 2 team games, a lot of teams would send someone down here, which is pretty valuable. But it's a big time waste if you don't find anything good. Like I only found a pack of missiles and a pack of supers, neither of which is hugely useful for me at this point in the game. However, if there is something very vital like a vanilla Morph Ball down there on that pedestal, you could spend a long time searching Link to the Past and not wanting to go into Super Metroid till you got your hands on the Morph Ball, and it's just sitting there waiting for you the entire time. So some people will take the risk to go just in case. But as with everything else in the game, it's a risk, especially if you're racing. I've mostly been watching. I've been playing a few seeds of this myself, completed a couple of them. But mostly I've been watching the races that Speed Gaming has been doing on their Twitch and YouTube channels. They're in a winter tournament for real money provided by a online betting system. I'm not advertising or anything, so I'm not going to talk more than that. I don't know a lot of details. I just watch the runs, and they're a lot of fun to watch these skilled Metroid players. As you can see, my skill is relatively rough. The good players are able to wall jump up these walls with great speed and rapidity, take out these enemies, and keep moving on. I just have to jump from block to block casually. I actually do a lot better with wall jumping in this game using the keyboard rather than a 8-bit DOE Super Nintendo emulated wireless controller. Excellent copy for running emulators on anything, really, because it has a So use the store to transition to Zelda Link to the Past. A common thing is stop in the water, see what's on that island. Silver arrows is really convenient item there. Really important item to have. You can beat Ganon without them because of a small glitch, but it's better to get them. They can also dominate a lot of enemies in the game if you get them early enough. Normally you'd only have them for Turtle Rock, where there are only a couple of enemies that are even vulnerable to the silver arrows, but if you get them early in the randomizer of Link to the Past, you get a lot of things. Now, after jumping in the water, you save and quit here at the sanctuary. There's a little trick you can do to get some early money that I see a lot of the racers do, and I've taken to doing this as well, because rupees are very much needed for early game, especially since you're not guaranteed to have a sword. Bombs are about the only weapon you can reliably get by purchasing them, and to do that you need rupees. So there's this place called the Chris Houlihan room, which you can reach by coming over to an area like this and jumping into the water without flippers. The game will keep putting you back on shore, and you do this enough times, usually about 4 times is enough, and then come over and fall into another hole. The game it's gotten confused, it doesn't know where to put you, so it puts you in this room, the Chris Houlihan room. There are 220 rupees here in 45 little individual piles, 5 groups of 9, and you can collect them all for 225 rupees. If you collect one and leave, they all disappear if you try to come back, so collect them all now. They will never return. You need those. So if you come here for the money, get it real quick. You exit and you're at Link's house. It's just how the game is programmed to do if this memory fails. So normally, after opening this chest, I like to actually go to do the quick Uncle secret passage room by the castle, where you would normally get your sword. As the game, you don't start on the Station of Ceres, and you don't start in the escape sequence in Zelda. Both of the prologue areas are automatically taken out, and you're just basically allowed to start the same as you would the start of any game after that once you've passed the prologue sequence. You can start in Link's house, and your default starting location in Super Metroid is the ship at Zevi's. The game auto-saves every time you transition between worlds, and then if you reset, you'll start in Super Metroid on the ship. So we come in here to Uncle. His item is randomized, of course. If he has the sword, you'll see the sword there in his hand as you approach. He just has missiles this time, which is not super useful to me. There are tree pulls you can do as well. Those are randomized. Drops from enemies are randomized. Most drops are randomized. 300 rupees from there is pretty handy. I'm going to get enough money at this rate to purchase Zora's flippers really early on. Killed those enemies in order to advance the tree pull. It's kind of a weird thing with the trees. There are 3 tiers of items you can get by pulling on a tree. And if you, depending on how many enemies you've defeated since you last tried to pull a tree, up to a maximum of 3. And that includes other pullable objects such as the right claw of Turtle Rock, if you've ever done that casually. But they all run on the same randomized system, whatever they are. Sometimes you'll get bombs, even packs of 4 bombs, and sometimes you'll get mana or even full mana refills. Sometimes you'll get hearts or various amounts of rupees. You know, all the general things that you can drop. So now I'm going to play with these birds for a while till they run off, and then do a level 2 tree pull to see what it is. Just single rupees, so it doesn't help all that much. And then the other thing that can drop is something from the little crabs there under the bushes. They only drop 5 arrows. It's pretty useless at this point. If I really get desperate after a big dungeon like Palace of Darkness where I really need arrows, I'll do it. I can check over to see what the lumberjacks have. An energy tank. If I have to do an early Aghanim play, and I have boots, it might be worth it to come pick up a tank, but most likely that's never going to be touched during the game. So again, basically what I'm just doing here is showing some of the early checks. This is the route that I like to take. You come up here, check that, get a couple of drops from the trees and the crab to see what they drop, to see if you can hopefully get early bombs or a lot of rupees so you can afford bombs. Deal with these stupid birds, and then come up here for 2 items. The mushroom here is where you would normally find this, and eventually you'll be able to take it up to the witch and exchange that for magic powder, but here we have missiles instead. You can already see, all these items randomized between them. We're finding a bunch of Super Metroid stuff here in Link to the Past, which isn't useful for us right now. Red Boomerang, so now I actually have a weapon I can sort of defend myself with. The Link to the Past, especially, a lot of Super Nintendo games lag a lot more than I ever really realized as a kid, and I start to go the wrong way here and attract the thief. Whoops, not supposed to go that way. The red boomerang sparkles actually cause a lot of lag. Some of the racers, and who are especially those who are speedrunners of A Link to the Past, hate the red boomerang because it creates a lot of lag with its sparkles, and they prefer the lesser speed and shorter range of the blue boomerang. They can make use of that, and some don't like either boomerang. But the randomizer actually gives you an option to press the Y button on the menu to switch between blue and red if you've collected them both. In the vanilla game, of course, you would have the blue boomerang and then toss it into the waterfall fairy's place, and she'd give you a better red boomerang as a replacement. Although, again, some people think it's not better. So I made a mistake here. Normally you want to collect bombs before you go dropping into the well. Some people do it automatically, but because I was initially talking, even though my mic wasn't working when I was playing this, I was distracting myself and forgot to go get those bombs. So first I come over to collect the item from the merchant. He's a missile salesman today instead of a bottle merchant. And now I need to go collect some bombs. You need about 8 bombs to open all the early areas of A Link to the Past, and possibly more bombs to kill the mini Moldorms and mini Moldorm caves so you can get through it. That's a very important early check, as we're going to see. So luckily I have so many rupees, I can easily afford 10. One of the other things you can do is try to farm a bomb drop, and that hut in the bottom left corner we just passed will have 4 guaranteed bombs in it. You can go in and out constantly, kill the rats with pots, and sometimes they drop bombs as well. Now I'm coming back up to the well to get the item behind there. One of the early things I'm looking for very much is the Morph Ball, which in Super Metroid is required to get pretty much anywhere. You can do a few things if you get Screw Attack or Speed Booster, but really without Morph Ball and bombs or power bombs, there's a lot of progress that's impeded. So that's what we're really looking for here. Especially early on, more ammo is always useful and good, but really, that's mostly Morph Ball. On the Zelda side, we're hoping to find a sword so we can really defend ourselves. You can get other weapons, but they aren't as reliable as the basic sword is for most circumstances, as well as items to get me to the Dark World and the Moonpearl so that I can actually do things in the Dark World. So there are 5 chests in the Thieves' Hut here, 4 there, and then 1 behind that wall, so this is a good check early on as well. So many things in Kakariko Village. Cane of Burna is pretty nice, and Hookshot was really valuable. That will eventually open up a few areas that we can check, and it's a weapon against mini Moldorms especially, so at the very least, I won't have any trouble with mini Moldorm Cave now, trying to use bombs on them, because the Hookshot, although it stuns most enemies, there are an odd collection of enemies that get one shot by the Hookshot, well, but again, most enemies be stunned, but some enemies that get damaged by it will get one shot by the hook shot, including the Penguinators and Ice Palace. So, but mini Moldorms are among the enemies that get killed by the hook shot, so we will be able to take care of them easily. A couple more checks I can do in here. The sick kid is in that house, but he will only give you an item if you have a bottle. No bottle for us yet, so I need to come in here instead, get a heart. More health is good to help you survive. Eventually, a lot of racers will pass by a lot of health upgrades if they see them ahead of time, especially once they've gotten what they feel is a comfortable amount of hearts. But playing casually, I'll generally try and grab as much health as I can. Then, of course, the chicken hut here. There's a item behind that explodable wall. That's our 3rd bomb we've used in the village so far. And just got them all refilled by a bomb collection. So that's most of the main items we can actually collect. There's one more item we can get, and one that we can look at but cannot yet access. Over here in the library, normally you'd have the Book of Medora. You need the boots to knock it off, so knock it off the top of the shelf so you can collect it. So in the vanilla game, of course, after getting the boots for the green pendant from Sahasrarla, you would come and get the book so you can go into Desert Palace. But right now it's only a 5 capacity bomb upgrade, so I'm not likely to come back for that at any point, even if I do get the boots really early on. Now, normally you can hop down to the bottom and just go over and check this racing game prize before you go and get it, but I was, once again, just kind of on autopilot doing it without thinking that normally I don't even bother going in unless I check and find it's something that I need first. But I went and did it anyway and was going to grab it, whatever it was, because it would be, since I'm playing casually, it would be probably useful to me. And, oh, look, it's actually an ether tablet, so the ether medallion. So once I get a sword, I can start using that to freeze enemies and possibly to get into either Misery Mire or Turtle Rock. The entrances the medallion required to get in are also randomized. So they could be vanilla, Ether for Misery Mire, and Quake for Turtle Rock, or they could both be Bombos, or they could both be something else. They could be different things of the same thing or whatever. There's only 9 combinations, of course, of what they can be, but since there are only 3 medallions and 2 dungeons that use them, but whatever. So once you're done with Kakariko Town, one of the places you can come here is to the South Shore area, as they call it. First visiting the dam here and getting 2 items out of it, one from the bottom of the well and one from the chest itself. If you have the mirror at this point, you can delete these blocks and do it all in a single trip, but we don't have the mirror. We get the flute there, though. That's extremely valuable early on. Opens a couple of areas, one of which I forget about for a long time. I forget that I have the flute as I'm checking other things and narrating. But that's okay. You come over here, pull this. You need to do this once again later in the game in order to get into Swamp Palace. At least you do if Swamp Palace is required. There are some seeds where certain dungeons are not required at all. In order to beat the game, you have to beat both games by defeating the golden 4 of the statue in Super Metroid, and then the 7 crystal dungeons, which again are randomly assigned to all the 10 dungeons available in the game, 3 light side and 7 dark side. Once you have the 7 crystals, that opens up the way to Ganon's tower, and you can defeat Ganon. Once you've beaten both Ganon and Mother Brain, you win the game, and it goes to the credits and gives you your stats and stuff. After you've defeated one of the games, if you defeat Super Metroid first, once you get out of the escape climb, the timer isn't there, and then the escape sequence stops, and you're back in the world of Super Metroid. With the Hyper Beam, you can continue using that, which is awesome. But then you return, you can then continue on and go back to Link to the Past and finish it. And same with Link to the Past, after going through the door, after defeating Ganon, you will head back to you'll reload on the top of the pyramid, and you can drop down and fight him again if you really want to. So that's a check that's unusual. A lot of people don't do that, but I feel it's best to get it out of the way. Agina's Cave, over there in the desert, is a very out-of-the-way location, and so it's avoided a lot of time by many racers but I've seen too many important items be in that cave early on, so I like to get it out of the way to make sure that I, don't leave an important item in a location like that and forget all about it. Normally, if they do go check Agina's Cave, they also check the desert ledge, but I don't feel that's as important because there's a lot of enemies in the desert, and you can't really do much with them. You have to run around them, and it doesn't help you a whole lot because you're likely to go back to desert when it's more convenient later anyway. Of course, since I have the flute, this is a particularly bad play because I can eventually go get the flute and then flute over to the desert area and check the ledge and Agina's Cave really quickly, but oh well. That's what you'll see a lot of racers do. So as you can see, the hookshot dispatches the mini Moldorms quickly, and then I get to check all these items in the cave for the first time, getting Hammer, a very valuable single rupee from the NPC himself, and some basic stuff, including Spring Ball, a moderately useful item early on in Super Metroid. You normally don't get it till near the end of the game, and any speedrunner of the game will not bother getting it because it is not useful enough based on how much time it takes to get, since you have to go through the Shack Tool experience. So if you've ever seen the racers playing this game and have to go to Shack Tool, the regular watchers love it because it's always fun to see people spend more time in trolley seats and things when Shack Tool has a valuable item hidden. But Spring Ball allows you to jump while you're in Morph Ball form, which has a lot of uses, and there's a few tricks you can do by Spring Ball jumping in midair by disabling it and then turning it back on at just the right moment. So unfortunately, the game is about to die as my programs sometimes do. I have a pretty good computer, but it does have some issues with dying. I'm trying to avoid getting hit by the crowds because one hit will kill me since they do 2 hearts. And it's at this point that the thing dies on me, so I have to reload. I last saved after doing the South Shore and Agina Cave checks, so now I have to go back through Moldorm all over again. The mini Moldorm Cave and all that. So unfortunately, we're going to have to watch that sequence again before I can come back and do my Ice Rod Cave shenanigans. So again, I discovered something here, though. I had a previous save game, but I went on the middle sequence when I was starting this new one. This was the seed I had gone through but hadn't finished because of distractions and such. I find it's more fun in the early game anyway, first discovering things, and then when you get to the larger, later dungeons and such, they're not as important. So I realized, though, that when you're playing this game, you can't really use more than one save, because whenever you transition between the 2 games, it will auto-save on the top save file. It doesn't keep whatever save file game you just started, so now that second one is useless, but here's my old game is gone, so I can't go back and check it. No big loss, since I didn't remember really what was going on anyway, and was mostly using this seed just as this little example thing here. So not only do I have to do everything over again, I have to run back through here and go back to Zelda again, through this cave down to the fortune teller's hut. So this is what you'll see most people do at the very start of a game normally. Because of the threat of the game dying on me and a couple of other things, because I'm not good and because I'm playing casually, not racing, I'll use a bunch of save states from this point on to try and, for safety's sake. Using save state saves in this game is not legal if you're racing. So if you join the community in the Discord for the SMZ3 Randomizer and participate in any of those, that's grounds for disqualification. You're not supposed to use that as slowdowns or any of the emulator-specific functions. Recommended is to try and put the game on a like an SD2 SNES flash cart that you can buy and put in an actual Super Nintendo system, something like that, to play the game normally. Just don't use emulator functions. You're not allowed to in a race. But if you're playing casually, go for it. Just have fun you need to. I'm not very good at the game, especially the Super Metroid tricks, so I use them a bunch just to avoid losing a lot of time. So I was trying to see if there was a way to go around at first, but there really isn't. It's been quite a while since I've really explored Zelda Link to the Past and played it casually, so there's a few things that I'm not quite so sure about. When I first started doing a couple of Z3 and SMZ3 randomizers a little bit earlier in Seeds, having a lot of trouble with the Moldorms this time. I went into a lot of caves that are useless and such, but after watching so many games, I've finally gotten used to where all the chests are and where the chests aren't, so I avoid those specific rooms. Some of the dungeons I still have trouble with, especially the bigger, more annoying ones like Skull Woods, Ice Palace, Misery Mire especially. But there's a save state just in case the game drops. I use SNES 9X as my emulator of choice, and so you will very often you get those very big text screens on there. I like to rename the files most of the time, but I didn't bother with this one, so you can see the seed. If you pause this video at any point when I do the save states, you can read the seed number, and so if you want to try this particular seed, you can actually put that seed into the location of the, which I'll have down in the description below. You can go to the site to get your personal ROM, put in the seed, and you actually get this exact game that I'm playing right here. There are millions of possibilities and such, of course, but so it's very hard to play the same seed twice unless you deliberately put in one of those seed numbers. So the crabs were nicer to me this time, allowing me to come in here into the ice cave. Now, at this point, these are all the easy checks in the game, although the mini Moldorm cave sometimes isn't easy, but it's worth it to get 5 items so close together. So I began to be somewhat perplexed as to where I can go to advance. And this is something that will happen to you a lot unless you have, but there are certain tools you can use like item checks, lists, and just trackers, they're called. They're websites, the couple of places you can visit. I don't know any of them specifically. I tend not to use them. I just like to play free. But especially if you look for and join the Discord, which they have info on in the main website for this, they will have links to trackers and things you can use to keep track of what items you've found or what places you've visited, what bosses you've killed, just to help you, keep track of the information, because it's a lot harder to play a randomizer because there's no guide except for these spoilers that you can save that tell you where everything is at. So Sahasrahla here will tell you where the green pendant is. It's in Swamp Palace this time. So Swamp Palace is a pendant dungeon, which means I might not have to do it, but maybe I'll have to go there to get items out of it because it has 6 items, and maybe even to the item Sahasrahla has is very important. Flippers here is very useful. That opens up a few checks for me. I was afraid I'd have to go into Eastern Palace after this for my next couple of checks. I might anyway, just because I'm here. No, I choose not to. I choose to try and chase the flippers. There's logics in the game that dictate where certain items have to be, and they assume that you can do certain tricks to access things. There are certain things you can do outside of logic, mostly a couple of glitches in Legend of Zelda or some particularly hard tricks in Super Metroid, but for the most part, the game assumes that you're going to follow a logical path. It kind of has a playthrough it wants you to do to collect items. So when it gives you a specific item that unlocks certain locations, oftentimes another item you need to get to other locations will exist past these checks. So since I picked up the flippers, that logically tells me that maybe there is I got them pretty early, so maybe there is a very important item in these flipper checks. First, we come under here to the bridge to talk to the hobo. Normally, you talk to him. They just call him the hobo because he's a guy living under a bridge. I guess that's it. But he normally gives you a bottle. He does indeed give me a bottle filled with red potion. That will all the bottles in this game are randomly given contents. Sometimes they're empty. Randomly, they can be empty. But they can also have one of the 3 potions. They can have a fairy or they can have bees in them. And if you get a bee and you take it to the vendor, you can actually... I had forgotten about this until somebody did it in one of the randomizer races I watched recently. If you have a bee and release it next to the bottle vendor in Kakariko Village, or in this case, the missile vendor, he will pay you for the bee. I guess in this particular seed, he turns bees into missiles for Samus. You could make up your own different kinds of logic for the game as to how they're supposed to interact or whatever. It makes no sense, but it's just fun to play. So now we take this water pool. Normally you'd need the gloves to get up here, so you could come to Zora and buy the flippers. But if you have the flippers, you can bypass the rock you would need to lift by using the whirlpool. And come in here. Normally you'd toss items into there and upgrade your normal shield to a red shield and your blue boomerang to a red boomerang, but they have replaced that in the item randomizer with just basically 2 chests that have random things. You can also toss empty bottles into the fountain by approaching it, and similar to how they will in the vanilla game, they'll fill the bottle for you. Again, the contents of what they'll actually fill it with are randomized. You could just get a simple green potion, you could get another bee, you could get a blue potion, which is really valuable, or maybe even a fairy. They put some of their own kind in the bottle. So now, since I've gotten so many rupees, I can come pay 500 for Zora, who usually does not have a good item because non-good items greatly outnumber actual key items. But at this point, an energy tank is almost worth 500 rupees, especially considering how much I have. And I think it's even worth it to come and pick up whatever item I spotted over on the waterfall on the ledge here. Which was a piece of heart, I think. Yeah, I need enough health. I think a piece of heart is for me. So that gives me a full extra health upgrade, so that's good. I won't quite die super easy now. So I have the hammer and hook shot, and I'm wondering what to do at this point. I have forgotten entirely that I have the flute. That's actually where my next progression is, but again, I've forgotten about it. So first thing I'm going to do is, I think I have nothing left to do but Eastern Palace, the first few checks there. And so that's where I'm heading. I think. Yes, I decide I'm going to pick up some more bombs first because I've forgotten that I have a weapon. Oh, the first place I'm going to go is actually, I haven't done the front of castle either. So this is a place where logic comes into play, and there's some really confusing logic as well with keys and chests. Because the game, it's very possible in some of these dungeons with keys that are randomly in chests, that if you use them wrong, you could actually soft lock yourself by permanently locking yourself out. If you use a key that's supposed to be for a specific location and instead use it on a place that has a chest involved or something to prevent yourself. It's kind of hard to explain, but the total in programming this, and the people who made the original Link to the Past randomizer, go to great lengths in a normal itemizer to item randomizer to make sure that you cannot lock yourself out. So sometimes these checks are outside of logic and you may not even realize it, simply because the game has to assume that you are an idiot and using your keys in the worst possible way. Simply because you might take a gamble and it might pay off with where a key's going to be, and then you just permanently soft locked yourself. So like if there's a key somewhere where it's not supposed to be, and then I realize I have the hammer and don't need to bomb them. I'm like, oh yeah, I have the hammer. 3 more bombs, so I didn't need to buy all these bombs that I bought, because I was thinking I'd have to stun with the hook shot and then blow people up with the bombs. I was also looking for a stun drop, which is why I do this here. I'm trying to see what happens when you, because normally if you stun someone, it changes their drop to a like 5 rupees, I think it is, or maybe even just a single rupee in the vanilla game, I forget now. But if they would normally drop an important key or something, they will always drop that key. And I wanted to go ahead and test, since I have 2 stun weapons, what the stun weapon was. Normally you can just go around these guys or fight your way through them, but it's or just move past them and take a couple of hits, but I wanted to be safe, so I took the long way around them. They're annoying to deal with sometimes. Hammer is a short-range weapon, but it's as powerful as the Tempered Sword, so it one-shots all of these enemies. And getting it early is sometimes inconvenient if you don't have a sword, but it does allow you to kill a lot of enemies quickly. So another heart there. I haven't found anything super great down here yet, just keys. I found the key in that place, which means that certain of these checks are out of logic or something. I can't remember. Again, the weird key logic is really weird. Now, if I have a light source, a lantern specifically, I can also do the actual escape sequence and not just what this is, which is actually the Hyrule Dungeon. However, since I don't have the lamp yet, you could try and go through the dark room, but again, that is out of logic. I tried to open the door before going and grabbing the big key too. Whoops. That's what I get for talking while I'm trying to play. So just some more rupees there. So I didn't find anything in escape. And again, I'm starting to get a little panicked here because I'm not finding anything. And then I realized that I have the flute, I believe. And so I'm going to go release the flute. No, actually, I'm going to go check the sick kid. I have forgotten still entirely about the flute. I'm going to check sick kid because I got the bottle. So I think that that might be the next logical progression. Because giving me the flippers, all it did was give me my first bottle. So all that does is allows me to get an item from the sick kid. He doesn't have anything of note. And I start to get really desperate. I think that the only thing I have left is Eastern Palace. And then in the middle of Eastern Palace, I realized that I have the flute and I haven't activated it yet. So normally, coming back here would have served a double purpose because I could have not only gotten the sick kid's item, but I could have used the flute and gotten the bird so I could start fluting around the world. But I'm an idiot and totally forgot that. It's really funny to think about that later and to be commenting back here. So yep, 5 more super missiles, which is really nice for Super Metroid, but at the moment kind of useless. Doesn't help me at all. So continuing on, now we're going to Eastern Palace, honestly completely now. This is the only thing I feel I can do since I've forgotten about the flute. Again, there is a spoilers document that you can download with your ROM, which will tell you where all the items are. It's in a text format. I advise opening it with like a WordPad rather than just your basic Notepad function, because if you do it in Notepad, it's not properly spaced and everything's in a big, huge jumble. I tried to find a clever way around since I don't need to go to Sahasrara, but it ends up not working out. I talk about the lag from the boomerang there because you get a lot of it. I did in my initial setup, but pound that guy out of the way, collect a heart. I'm an obsessive item grabber when things drop, even if I don't need them. It's convenient for me that Super Metroid stops dropping things you don't need when you're full of them, and or if you don't have them yet. Because I just really grab a lot of things, and nothing super wrong with that, but it does waste a lot of time that builds up over a 3-4 hour run if you're, at my skill level trying to do one of these. I'm likely not to finish one of these before 5 hours is up, or maybe even more. And that's by moving quickly. And I don't keep a timer generally. Again, I'm not really good enough to try racing it. But so the items are also randomized in dungeons. That includes the heart containers of bosses. You've seen me find a couple heart containers already. So the boss will have an item. All of the chests will have an item. There are always 3 items that have to be in a dungeon: the compass, the map, and the big key, of course. Sometimes the big key is necessary and sometimes it isn't. It's pretty much necessary in every dungeon normally in vanilla if you follow the expected way, because even if there is no big door you have to go through, you have to use the big key to get the item out of the chest in order to get to the end of the dungeon. But of course, in the item randomizer, that's not always the case. This is one where I need the big key, not only to get to the Armos Knights, but also to open the big chest. So there's not a lot I can do here, though, because the dungeon is both lamp locked, as they say, and fire locked. There are dark rooms you have to go through, and the game does not expect you in logic to try and navigate the dark room without the lamp. And I'm not very good, so I don't like to, even this one, which is an easy one. So there's a trick in this room. If you walk more or less in this manner, I do it kind of badly here, but it works out. You can spawn only 2 of the 4 knights. If you do it kind of okay, you can spawn 3 of them, which is what I usually do. I'm not usually able to spawn only 2, but I managed to make it work this time around. Easiest to dispatch them with pots because they jump away from swords and hammers. The hammer especially, you have to get so close they're likely to just walk into you. So there's only one more item I can check here, the big key chest, and then to get further on in the dungeon I have to go past the dark room, and then even then I have to, in order to defeat the dungeon, I need the bow to kill some red Igors later on who are only vulnerable to arrows. So now I have finally remembered, oh yeah, I have a flute. That's the only thing left I can do is release the bird. And with that, I can actually go to Death Mountain. And there's actually a portal at Death Mountain that takes you to Upper Norfair in, they call it the Upper Norfair Business Center, the main entrance to Upper Norfair. So it's not a heated room, so you don't need the Varia suit, but it takes you there into the Super Metroid game. So you're going to see how the transition works now, since I spent most of my time in Link to the Past. So this is some of the things that you can do with this, and it's some of the neat ways that the game is opened up. Normally, to get to Death Mountain, you need the lamp from Link's house, and then so you can navigate the dark caves, and then you have to get the gloves from Desert Palace, because there's a big rock guarding the entrance that leads up to Death Mountain. However, of course, in the randomizer, because of you getting items at certain points, there are a lot of different ways to get to the different areas. And adding Super Metroid to it makes it even more like that, because you can teleport between the areas to get to certain areas. I was going to do a save and quit and then realized that, wait, no, I just need to fly my duck. So again, if you want to navigate the dark room, you can go save the old Mayan and get the item he has, but I don't want to, so I'm just mostly avoiding these. However, even if you haven't saved him, he's still inside this cave, and you can refill your hearts by talking to him, as I do here. Do another safety thing now that I've advanced so far. The safety save state, even though the game's about to save when I transition. You don't get to start. You don't have a choice to start at the mountain until you have saved the old man, however. First thing I'm going to do is check the item on Spectacle Rock, and then check for the cave inside Spectacle Rock to see if it's an item worth getting, which it usually is for me since I'm a filthy casual and want all the safety I can. Missiles up there would be kind of nice to grab. You don't need all the ammo in the game, but I like to grab all the ammo I can, as safety. And those are super missiles, which I very much think are valuable enough at this point to pick up, especially since I'm about to be doing a lot of Super Metroid. So you hop down into this cave to get to the area underneath Spectacle Rock. Now, most of what I've gone through here is just kind of my preferred way of going the game, and of course the items you find will dictate the areas you can go to and how you have to deal with each place. But doing that circuit, doing the Houlihan room, getting the Link's house item, can I hookshot across on that rock? I can't. I have to drop down. I can collect life here though for help from these fairies. But so I start out in Link's house. I then go grab the 2 uncle items after doing the Houlihan room, of course, transitioning over as soon as I can. And then I go back to Sanctuary and do the full circuit, north to the Lost Woods, check the 1 item in the Lumberjack's Cave, and as we call it, and then the 2 items in the Lost Woods that I can, go into Kakariko Village, complete that, then teleport down to South Shore. I go west to Agina's Cave. Most people avoid that for a while. Then I go to Mini Moldorm Cave and the Ice Rod Cave, and at that point I figure out how easy is it for me to do the dungeons in the Dungeon of Hyrule Castle, how easy is it to do Eastern, what items have I gotten that may open up places for me. Once you get the gloves, the hammer, and the Moonpearl, or maybe 2 glove upgrades in the Moonpearl if you're in a really lucky seed, you can go to the Dark World and start exploring that as well. So, but that's all going to be determined here. So one of the other things I realized is that with the hookshot, I can go to East Death Mountain, which is actually what I decided to do first, because there are 7 items here in this so-called Paradox Cave. I entered into a cave. It's called Paradox because it is a paradox. You enter into a cave at the very bottom of the mountain, and then you fall down a hole. And if I exit out there, I'll actually be further up the mountain. So it makes no sense. It's a paradox. Varia suit was very valuable find, and with instant access to Norfair, it may be that the game actually wants me to hit Norfair next. I'm not going to. I'm going to go back to Brimstar once I go to Death Mountain, as you'll see. I still need the Moonpearl, but I have, or the Morph Ball for Super Metroid. But I have, even with the Varia suit, I can't really do much in Norfair without the Morph Ball and without maybe a couple of other items. Like high jump boots. You're really designed to have high jump boots or something similar. So nothing really great that I find in here besides the Varia suit. Quake medallion may be necessary. Again, the medallions may or may not be. My first set of gloves, actually. That's really hype. I can now go to the Dark World, but I need the Moonpearl before I can actually do anything with it. I can also actually get up to the Tower of Hera, which is actually where I decide I'm going to go next, after checking Spiral Cave as well. Spiral Cave, once again, is another cave up here, which all the locations in Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past have been given names by the community. They've just come up with names that they've agreed upon, or somebody decided it and it just stuck from one streamer speedrunning the game kind of thing. Because of largely from playing randomizers, because most of the caves don't matter in the casual playthrough. All of these items are mostly useless garbage to somebody who's speedrunning the game. But that's what makes the randomizer interesting, is you have to visit all these. And this is a big cave that's a spiral, so they call it Spiral Cave. It's a lot of fun to race through with the boots, and it feels very slow when you don't have the boots. Hook shot, luckily, makes it easy because all the enemies in here die in one shot to the hook shot. Otherwise, they're not terribly bad enemies, especially when you can speed boots through them, but they just get in the way and are annoying. Fall down here, and there's one item on the ledge, which is Plasma Beam. I'm very glad that I went and got this first, because this is a super awesome item for Super Metroid. Most powerful beam in the game, and makes the Spazer useless, sadly. Now, it will not automatically equip because the Spazer and Plasma can't be used together. If you hack the game to make them both be on your beam at once, you have the Murder Beam, which murders the game. That's why it's called Murder Beam. It literally kills the game, and you can't, and it crashes. So you can have beams equip on your character in Zelda on your Super Metroid game, but for some reason they can't code it to remove beams. And so it isn't smart enough to remove Spazer, so they just have it so neither Spazer nor Plasma automatically equips when you find it in Link to the Past. Super Metroid, it's a different matter. It will unequip the other beam and equip the one you found. So finding Spazer first is better if you find both of them, because then it doesn't de-equip Plasma to do it, but that's actually going to happen here. So I decided to go ahead and check Tower of Hera, and unfortunately it is fire locked, as I find out here. In order to advance, you need the big key, which can only be in one of 3 locations. Right here in this little basement cave, which unfortunately the key is, or it could be in the map pedestal here in the center of the main room, what we're about to go see, or it's in the basement. And if you find the small key, but not the big key, I did get a sword, luckily, so that's nice. But with the key in the basement, that means the big key's locked in the basement. In order to get that chest, you have to have a lamp or a fire rod to light the torches. Since I have neither, I can't advance in the Tower of Hera. But I can go back to Norfair now, and I have remembered that when I did play the seed before, I was very frustrated when I finally found the Morph Ball, because it is here in this area. And this is a bad room to check. This is high jump room. Checking it without Morph Ball is troublesome, because if you don't kill this enemy here and notice that the door is gray, I can't get back through that door until I've killed that enemy, and then I can open it up. So since if you don't get Morph Ball there, and you don't kill the enemy fast enough, you have to wait for him to do a full circuit of the room before you can kill him and then leave. I have seen that happen in races before. People without the Morph Ball have made it here, they come in to check and don't get a Morph Ball there, but I did. I found Morph Ball. I come up here to kill him so I can make sure to get out of the room. Some people do other tricks to make sure to kill him. I kind of wanted that, but I waited too long, so I don't get the super missile refill. Don't really need it, but again, compulsive item grabber. I actually make these wall jumps. I'm not good at wall jumps with the controller. I'm much better with the keyboard. You'll see the input when I swap to keyboard several times over the course of this little video. Have to use a power bomb there because I don't have normal bombs. This is pretty common in the randomizer. Bombs are one of the first things they give you, but super bombs will blow up everything that bombs will. The only thing that bombs really do for you, that power bombs don't, is that I go through here to save it real fast, since and actually to do a reset as well. I'm resetting the game so that I can start at the ship and explore Brimstar. That's much more important to me than Norfair, because there's a lot more tricks I can do, and also I want to show off a lot of earlier things you can do in Super Metroid once you find the Morph Ball. This is kind of the basic stuff you'll see a lot of racers do. They'll vary up how they go through here in a few different ways. But if they find the Morph Ball early enough that they don't do some desperate Super Metroid things, I get my one Power Bomb and my one guy back. They'll go on this route. So, but because there's only one Morph Ball, but there are 10 Morph Ball bombs, but there are 10 Power Bombs, you're more likely to find the Power Bombs first, and hopefully multiple of them, because you only have a limited amount. That's one of the advantages of Morph Ball bombs, is you have an infinite amount, but they take longer to get through some obstacles. There's some that have to use Power Bombs. I remember my Plasma and turn it on here. Again, it didn't equip automatically because of just the weird phaser or spazer Plasma interaction. Now, I could drop down and do things like Alpha Missiles, but I actually waste a Morph Ball Bomb here because I remember that I want to do the Morph Ball Bomb Chorizo, actually. Or do I not? That must have been another seed I was playing recently. I guess I don't do Bomb Chorizo. I was probably going to do him later, which can be a pain because you can actually get out of the room. The door doesn't lock until you have Morph Ball Bombs. He will get up if you wait long enough, but okay, I'm checking Gauntlet here. Nothing good, so I don't have to worry about going through the entirety of Gauntlet because I don't care about either of those items enough to brave the Gauntlet. Even a piece of heart is not worth going through Gauntlet for. I can just blow these guys up with Plasma since I have it. This is the door that goes to Torian and Mother Brain, and if you open it up early in the game, it does save that you've opened that door so you don't have to do it later. The other thing you can do with Morph Ball Bombs is do an infinite bomb jump, which will let you get up, essentially fly. You have infinite vertical and can reach certain areas that are normally would require space jump. It's a really difficult trick, though, and I can't really do it. So I very much hope I don't find normal Morph Ball Bombs, despite their convenience, simply because I don't have to rely on that. Now, this room normally requires a speed booster to go through. However, there is a very well-known trick amongst people who play a lot of Super Metroid called the Mach Ball. And I've save stated here just to save me a little bit of time. This is, again, you're not supposed to save state. It's illegal in racing, but I'm doing it just for a little bit of convenience to save time so that I don't have to run back out the door and then try it over again. I usually get it about once every 5 tries. Now, you saw me take off Spring Ball before, and that's the reason. Normally, you hold jump while completing the Mach Ball, but if you do that with Spring Ball, you'll automatically jump, and that'll ruin your Mach Ball. The thing about the Mach Ball is, if you you do the Morph Ball right as you hit the ground, you'll maintain your velocity. You have to do it exactly as you're touching. If you do it early, you bounce, and late, of course, it doesn't help either. So it's kind of a difficult trick. You have to hold your forward and your run and your jump all at the same time and then smoothly hit that. But boom, there we go. That's Mach Ball. It lets you maintain your normal running speed in Morph Ball form. And since you're smaller, you can slide under those things. There are a couple of places where it's useful. The one disadvantage with ordinary Plasma all on its own is that it has a shorter terrain thing. So here I just got Spazer, so I don't want Spazer, I want Plasma. And I have to use Power Bombs here to open up this last area here. This is a really good trick to learn because there are 3 items here normally hidden behind Speed Booster, and they may not be super great or necessary, like just missiles and some rupees here. Spazer's useless since I have Plasma. A lot of people just hate the Spazer. I don't mind it. It is definitely better. Gives you a wider area effect on the shots as well as a bit more damage, so that's kind of nice. But Plasma kills enemies so quickly without having to use ammo. Boom. Just blowing through these guys. They normally take 2 or 3 hits to kill most of them. And I run back for that even though it's a single arrow. That was silly of me. I should have checked a little first. Now I have to waste a power bomb doing that. Not a big deal, though, because the next area I'm going to will give you a lot of power bombs. Now, when you're playing the game casually, you'd be able only to get the one item there, and then you'd have to move on into the pink Brimstar. But because we have power bombs in the randomizer early enough, we could come down here and do the Edacoons area. And in this first room, you have a bunch of these, whatever they're called. I don't know the name of hardly any of the Super Metroid monsters. I only just started playing Super Metroid a couple months ago after watching this randomizer. It's the entire reason I started playing it, and I found that I was intimidated by Super Metroid before because of all the complicated things in it, and I'm still not very good, but it is just so much fun to play, and this randomizer is very fun to play as well. I love randomizers and the randomness of things. Don't find a lot of great stuff so far, but there's 3 items here in the Edekun's area. Those 2, and then you drop down into this pit, where after braving a lot of dangerous spikes and several enemies that can do a lot of damage to you if you... between the spikes and enemies here, you can take a lot of damage if you aren't very good, like I'm not, or if, you know, just have a couple of bad jumps and things. But come through here into the wall jump area, and again, I am horrible at wall jumping with the controller pad. I tried to do it a little bit here, fail miserably, and finally just give up and go back to using my keyboard. And you'll see me do a lot better here. Doing wall jumps off a single wall, I still have a bit of trouble with, but I can do it a lot more easily than I can with the keyboards, you'll see. And going back and forth between the walls, I do that really well with the keyboard, almost flawlessly. That's the slow way, but no good racer worth his salt. If you can't do regular wall jumps up a wall, you'll probably never compete in a real race. So unless you're just doing it totally for fun, you know, you've got to get good at that if you want to be good. I'm never going to be able to compete in those races because I can't do that well, but I'm trying a Mach Ball here to get out, because if you Mach Ball properly, you can actually get enough speed to go over that gap, and then you don't have to wall jump back up again. I can Mach Ball well enough with the Super Nintendo control pad, but again, require the keyboard to wall jump properly. I do not know if it's legal to swap between... You can use whatever inputs you like in the race. I've heard that some people do use keyboard as their input, but I don't know if it's legal to swap back and forth or not. I would probably have to play on keyboard if I were attempting to race, but I would prefer to be able to swap back and forth because it just feels more natural to use a controller most of the time. Anyway, here in Pink Brimstar, there's nothing else here but a few enemies and this stupid wall you have to power bomb through, or you can speed dash through it. Though, of course, if you don't let go of your speed dash before hitting that floor right there, you fall through and into the Shine Spark pit, where you have to Shine Spark to get out. Very annoying. So kind of tricky wall jump here. Normally you need the grapple beam to get past here, so this is technically out of logic, or some flying methods such as infinite bombs, actually, infinite bomb jump or space jump. But again, trying with my controller, it's not working, so I'll just, whoops, accidentally ran too far and fell through there. I'll jump back up and then effortlessly wall jump thanks to the fact that I'm now using keyboard. So here we go, run over, hop, whoops, didn't go far enough, hit the wall, bounce off there, again, effortless wall jump. It's not, that's one of the easier wall jumps in the game, so this is technically out of logic, but most people who really play Super Metroid should be expected to be able to make that kind of jump. Since I have plasma, I can make pretty short work of these side hoppers. Normally I don't have the weapon when I come in here and you're kind of low health and they can kill you fast, so I was a bit worried, but then I realized, oh yeah, I have plasma. Pop, pop, done. So only rupees in here, unfortunately. And if you're really fast, you can grab the item and then jump back up to those falling blocks. A lot of really good racers will do that in a lot of places. Of course, I'm not that good. So, a couple of other tricks that I like here in Pink Brimstar. I only have one power bomb, so I'm in a bit of a pickle. I thought about using it here and then decided against it. But I need to collect another power bomb before I can go into the next area, which is the Spore spawn skip. So if you're ever watching anybody who's good at this game playing either a speed run or a race, you will never see them fight Spore spawn, because they will pick up those early super missiles using that Mach Ball, because that's what you would normally find up top there on the way out, instead of the, what did I find? Just some regular missiles, was it one with power packs? I can't remember. Whatever I found up there. Normally it's super missiles, and that becomes the first 5 super missiles you get, and then you can use those super missiles to do this Spore spawn skip coming up. But again, you need 2 power bombs as well, one to get in and one to get out if you don't have regular bombs, so I have to farm up a power bomb. These guys can drop them, but it's a really low chance. I finally start thinking about maybe giving up and... Or actually, what I decide to do is to farm them from inside, because it actually goes faster. There's a couple of pixel locations here where you can make your way through. They are pixel perfect, but there are several of them. This is the one I like to use in the middle of that round spot, and I got it first try, which it's kind of unusual for me. I was very happy about it, but I couldn't make the morph to get inside, although I could have just used Spring Ball instead, because Spring Ball, you can... Mid-air morph is one of the other things I'm pretty weak on. So I'm killing every enemy here, trying to get him to drop me a power bomb so I can get out, because I'm trapped here until I get a power bomb. It's the big disadvantage to getting only 5 power bombs and then doing Super Metroid. Some people like to try and do as much as they can in Link to the Past until they find at least 2 power bombs or regular bombs so that they can get through everywhere. So once again, now back to farming. I'm going to farm up a power bomb. It's going to take a little bit, unfortunately. So again, I've really loved this randomizer. It's been a lot of fun to watch. Speed Gaming has 4 Twitch channels. They have the races going on regularly. If you follow them, you can get the alerts to when they come up. You'll see players a lot better than I am doing some amazing things in Super Metroid and see full versions of the game. This is just a little 1-hour video I made showing some of the early portions of it, you know, kind of as both an introduction to it and a how to play, you know, how to do the early game primer. This is, again, lots of different people use lots of different strategies. Finally get my Morph Bomb. Try to farm up a little bit more just in case I can get a second one, but it's, again, it's like a 2% drop chance. So finally I give up and go. But these are just things that I've, an easy way I've found to do the early game, and from what I've seen from the best runners, kind of the most efficient way overall, with the slight exception of the Agina, which I do for personal preference. So here's another trick, which I'm not nearly so good at, but I do manage to pull off. This is called the Wave Gate skip. Generally, it's just called that. There's a big wave gate up there, so you normally need the wave beam, and that you're expected to have the grapple. I do a very, again, illegal but important save state here, just in case I use up all my missiles trying to get this trick. But I decide to go ahead and do as many as I can. So the way this trick works is super missiles have this property where they're super. They will continue accelerating until they disappear, and they will accelerate so much they'll continue going off. They'll continue to exist off screen for a good portion of time. And so because of that acceleration, their explosion can actually pass through the wave gate to hit behind. Normally you need the wave beam to shoot through objects, and so these gates exist to force you to get the wave beam before you can traverse them as part of the artificial routing that the game has built into its system. And I got it there. Unfortunately, because you have no sound, you can't tell that I did, but you just have to keep doing it till you hear the wave gate sound. It's a little easier with the high jump boots, but by jumping off of there and upwards and using the R button to aim up, provided you have that as the normal default command, you can aim upwards and hit the gate with that. From this side, of course, you can just shoot the gate. You don't need the wave beam, so it's easy to get out. And since I already opened the door, I can just get out. But I collect a power bomb. Side hoppers have a good chance to drop power bombs if you're empty, so luckily I got another one there, which will allow me to get the last item here in Pink Brimstar. Down below, this is normally where you'd find vanilla charge beam. Unfortunately, I don't get anything quite so cool here. Oh, I get the mirror, which isn't good for Super Metroid, but is going to be wonderful for Link. He's very happy to hear that. Now, again, I'm really bad at mid-air morphs, but luckily Spring Ball makes the importance of mid-air morphs a lot less, because you can actually jump as a morph ball into small locations. For a little bit, I kind of hope for a power bomb drop, but not really. Mostly I'm just trying to get up into this pipe. Again, once again, trying my most valiant to do wall jumps with the controller, and I actually get it for once. Unfortunately, my only reward is 10 arrows, which is not great. So there are a lot of useless rewards in the game, unfortunately, but it makes it all the more sweet when you find something cool, like, oh, hey, I just got mirror. Oh, I got plasma early. Randomizers are really fun because of when you can bring weapons like Link's gold sword and silver arrows to bear on easy early bosses, or plasma and charge beam on bosses in Super Metroid who shouldn't have that. There are some amazing things that you can see, like one-shotting Crocomire with the plasma beam and just watching him walk slowly to his doom. So having an early plasma here, very valuable. So this guy will give me a power bomb, and I want that, so I decide to kill him. I should have gone in there and farmed power bombs. I'd forgotten entirely about that. But the fireflies in the X-ray room there, which is where that power bomb door goes through, always drop power bombs if you need power bombs and if your energy isn't super low. But because I don't do that, I have to skip the spacer item up ahead. But oh well. This is a problem, and I've seen runners do this too. Up there above is the spacer. I pointed to it with my gun. And it's not that hard to get a wall jump up there, even if you don't have high jump. Normally you would need high jump. That's how the game expects you to get there. But it does allow you with wall jumps to get up there. But you need a power bomb to get in, and then a power bomb to get out. And there's no enemies to kill to collect power bombs from. So if I had gone after that item, unless it was power bombs or morph ball bombs, I would have soft locked myself. So you can go here past that right wall to go fight Kraid, but I decide that this is pretty much going to be the end of the video. I've shown off some of the early Brimstar stuff, a couple of early tricks that pretty much any racer worth his salt is able to pull off, and I'm very proud of the fact that I was able to pull these off eventually. Run back to Link to the Past to save the game, and just basically finish my presentation. So that's 1 hour of a randomizer, just some of the early items you get and stuff. I've collected a huge amount of help on Link. I can now start adventuring a little bit with Link, but I can go collect the items at the top of the town Hera, and that's about it actually. But so I hope you liked the video, and check this out for yourself if you like it. I'll provide the links in the description, and so enjoy it. Yeah.